Hello everyone, this is Kenneth, and in this video we shall be continuing with our discussion on the theory of demand. Specifically, we shall be looking at the factors affecting demand, what we sometimes refer to as the determinants of demand. Recall that in our last video, we used the hypothetical example of Mr. A and Mr. B, who are consumers of petrol, to explain the meaning of demand, the demand schedules, both individual and market demand schedule, and we even went as far as using the aid of a two-dimensional graph to draw the demand curve, a downward sloping curve, indicating a negative or inverse relationship between prices and quantity demanded of various commodities. Today, we shall be continuing with the example and if need be, introduce further examples to illustrate how changes in various factors such as consumers' income, price of related commodities, taste and preferences of consumers, expectations, and total population of consumers can affect the demand. Meaning how these factors can either shift demand schedule or demand curve rightwards or leftwards. Let us first and foremost refresh our mind on what the demand schedule of Mr. A and Mr. B, and of course the entire market demand schedule, as we treated in our last video, look like. From the demand schedule above, we can see that for Mr. A, when the price of a liter of petrol is 100 naira, he was willing and able to purchase 60 liters of petrol. When the price increased to 150 naira per liter, he was willing and able to purchase 40 liters. While when the price increased further from 150 naira to 200 naira per liter, he was willing and able to purchase only 20 liters. The same thing applicable to Mr. B and of course the entire market demand. Remember that, like we said earlier, that the market demand schedule is only a horizontal summation of the various quantities of all the individual consumers in that market at those same prices. So when the price was 100, the two consumers were willing and able to purchase 140. That's 60 plus 80. While when the price increased to 150 naira per liter, the two consumers were willing and able to purchase 40 and 60, 100 liters of petrol. And the same thing applicable when the price increased from 150 to 200, when both of the consumers were willing and able to purchase 20 and 40 liters individual. That's a total of 60 liters of petrol. One very important question that we can ask ourselves from the above demand schedule is, why do these individuals, why do Mr. B and Mr. A chose to purchase exactly those quantities of petrol at those prices instead of other quantities? For instance, why did Mr. A purchase 60 liters of petrol when the price per liter of petrol is 100? Why did he not purchase 90 liters of petrol or 40 liters of petrol or even 80 liters of petrol like his counterpart Mr. B? Why did he purchase 20 liters of petrol when the price of petrol was 200 naira? Why did he not purchase other quantities? We understand that as the price was increasing per liter, going by the demand law we discussed last time, that ordinarily a national consumer will reduce the quantity. But we are not talking about specific quantity he settled with. Why did he not settle for 10 liters of petrol? Well, to answer this question, we need to understand that consumers' buying decisions are usually being influenced by several factors, including the income capacity of the consumer, the taste and preferences of the consumer, expectations of the consumer, and so on and so forth. In other words, a consumer's choice of quantities to buy at various price pair will depend on his peculiar economic situation or economic status. Hence, it is a possibility that Mr. B is probably earning higher income level than Mr. A, which is why Mr. B was able to purchase 80 liters even when the price was 100 naira per liter, and Mr. A was only able to purchase 60 liters. It could equally be a possibility that Mr. B is not earning higher income than Mr. A, but that Mr. B probably has higher tastes and preferences for petrol than Mr. A. Probably Mr. A has other sources of energy like solar panel, which helps him power some of his electrical appliances, and Mr. B probably does not have any other alternative source of energy, which is why his demand for petrol is greater even when the price is still the same. The second question to ask is, what would happen to the quantity demanded of petrol by these individuals if, for instance, any of the factors identified as being precursors to their demand decision changes. For instance, if the income of the consumers changes or if their tastes and preferences changes, is demand going to remain the same, or is demand going to increase, or is it going to decrease? Hence, we are going to be looking at the demand schedule in terms of whether the demand schedule is going to remain the same at these prices. If the income of Mr. A increases or decreases, is his demand, quantity demanded of this commodity is going to remain the same, or is the quantity demand of this commodity going to increase even though the price have not changed, or is this quantity demand of this commodity going to decrease? Let us look at how Mr. A would react if, for instance, there is a change in his income. Let's assume that Mr. A's income increases, and at the price of 100 naira, instead of purchasing 60 litres of petrol, Mr. A can now afford to purchase, say, 90 litres of petrol. While at the price of 150, instead of purchasing 50 litres of petrol, Mr. A can now afford to purchase 70 litres of petrol. While at the price of 200 naira per litre, Mr. A, instead of consuming 20 litres of petrol, can now afford to purchase 50 litres of petrol. Hence, we see that as a result of increase in the income of Mr. A, the quantity demanded at those prices have increased. Hence, the quantity demanded have moved there rightwards. What could happen if the income of Mr. A decreases? It means that Mr. A probably will no longer be able to afford the consumption, the previous consumption that he was consuming. Hence, if his income decreases, it is possible that at the price of 100 naira per a litre of petrol, Mr. A can no longer afford to purchase up to 60. He could now afford to purchase, say, 40 litres of petrol. If the price further increase from 100 to 150, Mr. A can no longer afford to purchase up to 40 litres of petrol. Now he can now only afford to purchase 20 litres of petrol. And if the price further went to from 150 to 200, Mr. A can no longer afford to purchase anything at all. Hence, his consumption will be zero. Therefore, we notice that as the income of Mr. A decreases, that the quantity demanded at the same original price tend to decrease. Hence, we have what is called a leftward shift in the demand curve of Mr. A. Let us plot this behavior of Mr. A in a graph, in a two-dimensional graph, so we can be able to see what will be the effect of an increase in income or a decrease in income of Mr. A in terms of what happens to the demand curve. From the original demand schedule of Mr. A, when the price of a litre of petrol was 100 naira, Mr. A was willing and able to purchase 60 litres of petrol, which is at this point. But when the price of petrol increased from 100 to 150, Mr. A was willing and able to purchase only 40 litres of petrol. And when the price further increased to 200, Mr. A was willing and able to purchase only 20 litres of petrol. So if we join these 3 points together, we'll have what is called Mr. A's demand curve. Which, like we said earlier, is the graphical representation of the demand of Mr. A. And from this, you can see that when the price is 100, Mr. A was willing and able to purchase 60 litres of petrol. But when the price goes to 150, Mr. A was willing and able to purchase only 40 litres of petrol. And when the price further went down to 200 naira per litre, Mr. A was willing and able to purchase only 20 litres of petrol. So what happened when the income of Mr. A increases? We discover that at the price of 100 naira, Mr. A was willing and able to purchase higher than 60. Hence, Mr. A was willing and able to purchase 90 litres of petrol. 90 should be here. And when the price increased further from 100 to 150 naira per litre, Mr. A reduced his demand from 90 litres of petrol to 70 litres. So when the price was 150, Mr. A was willing and able to purchase 70 litres, which is going to fall here. When the price further increased from 150 to 200 naira per litre, Mr. A was willing and able to purchase only 50 litres of petrol, and 50 litres of petrol is going to be found somewhere here. Hence, if we take these 3 lines together like we did in the previous case, we are going to obtain a new curve. we are going to obtain an entirely new curve, which we can now refer to as D2. And this shows that even though the price of the commodity that Mr. A is consuming have not changed, the quantity of the commodity he was willing to purchase at various prices have changed. Hence, we refer to that as a rightward shift in the demand curve. Hence, when the price was 100, Mr. A was now willing and able to purchase up to 90 litres of petrol. When the price was 150, he was now willing and able to purchase 70 litres of petrol. When the price further grew to 200, Mr. A was willing and able to purchase 50 litres of petrol. What about the case of a decrease in the income? Remember that Mr. A was consuming at this demand level when his income was constant, and when his income increases, Mr. A started consuming higher level of higher litres of petrol, which resulted in a shift in the demand curve, a rightward shift in the demand curve. From the demand schedule, we found that when the income of Mr. A decreases, and at the price of 100 naira per litre, Mr. A was no longer able and willing to purchase 60 litres of petrol, but now he was willing to purchase only 40 litres of petrol. When the price further went up to 150, Mr. A was only willing and able to purchase 20 litres of petrol, and when the price went to 200, Mr. A was not willing to purchase anything because his income could not afford him to do that. Hence, if we join these lines together like we've been doing, we still obtain another demand curve, which is now lower than the initial demand curve, meaning that as a result of a reduction in the income of Mr. A, Mr. A can no longer afford to purchase the quantities of goods and services he was purchasing previously. Hence, there was a resultant leftward shift in the demand curve of Mr. A. With the above background in our mind, let us now proceed to the discussion of how the 5 basic factors affecting demand can influence demand in terms of shifting the demand curve or demand schedule either leftward or rightwards. In this case, we shall be picking the factors one after another, and we are going to be starting with the first factor, which is income of the consumer.